So a moment.
I'll sit up straight
Yep.
if we're going to start.
Let me see. Yep, it's rolling.
Okay, great. So welcome to our bi-weekly meeting, Team Energy. Today, Mike is going to give us some updates based on City of Portland's business process model that they presented last meeting. Mike put it into the modeling software and did some evaluation based on that. And depending on time after that, we were thinking we could do a little brainstorming around putting some business process models around some of the other energy management activities that are kind of, known to all of us, but maybe not. We were looking at ways of setting up a model to do some of the activities that we want to capture, that based on David's spreadsheet that he provided several meetings ago, where it outlined a lot of the good practices, but it's at a high level, and we thought we'd talk to the team about how we could flesh those out a little further, specifically for our industry. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mike to show his development of the BPMN.
Thanks, Eric. It just occurs to me, those slides that I sent you and Cello earlier, maybe you want to send it out to the team in case they want to poke around in there. And if you get, when you get this PDF, really the first 6 slides, I think the first 6, yeah, are the relevant ones. Others are backup. But I will now share my screen so I can show it to you.
I'll make a folder for this meeting, today's meeting, and post it to that folder and send the link in the chat line in a minute.
Okay. So let me start at the beginning. This is the model that the City of Portland put together. Brittany talked about it and others, I guess the last meeting, and send us all a copy. It's in Visio, and just a little bit of background on BPMN. I think everyone here has heard this before, but I'll just say it again just to make sure it gets cemented in our memory. What we did with the previous UAIM project and now the WISE program is to adopt a business process model and notation as the way that we do business process models. The reason for that is it's a standard, a widely adopted standard, the de facto standard worldwide in multiple industries. And there's a good reason that why it got such great adoption, and that is that each of the widgets, the graphical icons that you see in BPMN, I'm going to show this model, is got a very specific meaning. Each icon has a full description of exactly what it means, what it does not mean, and the ways that these elements can be interconnected is rigorously specified. There is a standard format also widely adopted for saving these models so that they can be shared. And then, so the obvious benefits of such a standard are that we all get to share, the same knowledge and information much more effectively and efficiently. So if I know BPMN and I program the model, I just throw it, to anybody else that knows BPMN, and they can interpret it very clearly. So it eliminates a lot of confusion and creates the possibility of extensive sharing, which is what we want to try to achieve with WISE. So let me go back to the original model, which was done in Visio, but using the standard workflow shapes. And in doing a translation from Visio to BPMN. And by the way, I have also said before, there is a BPMN 2.0 template in Visio. So if you start modeling, it's highly recommended that you begin with that BPMN 2.0 template in Visio, which is supported after the, I think, 2013 version of Visio.
Mike,
And
Mike,
yeah,
the
go ahead,
link is
Joe.
the Mike is link is posted in the chat. If anybody wants to open the file, just wanted to mention that. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Cello. Yeah, so use the BPMN 2.0 template in Visio if you start doing modeling. It'll make things a lot easier for developing the BPMN model. So there is some alignment between those old workflow shapes and BPMN. Like these, the perform treasure hunt over here is a event. This is a document. This with the sort of squirrely bottom underneath it. The triangles are decisions or gateways, and I think Brittany did a good job of trying to specify this so that they the key information gets represented. Now what we want to do is translate that into BPMN, and then refine it as needed to make sure it's a clear representation of what the city of Portland is doing. So that's kind of a process that I do when I get one of these and I have to move it to BPMN. I don't always get it right, so please don't be don't get stuck if I interpreted something wrong. It's easy to change. These tools that we have for doing BPMN make it quite easy for us to adjust these and add additional details. So let me show you how I did that translation and show you something very interesting that came out of that exercise of doing the translation for this this City of Portland Energy Management Team business process model. So the first, let's keep in mind that one of the things that one of the good things that Brittany was trying to describe was how you accommodate this treasure hunt idea. We discovered, I think, in the discussions that those treasure hunts were, really important and generated a lot of good benefits for the utility. So we didn't have that in the original model, which remember looks like this. Although we put a note in here that, treasure hunt ideas need to get inserted here somehow. But what the benefit that we got from the model that Brittany prepared is that she made that very explicit. And so we want to try to fold that. In the end, what we're going to do is try to fold that idea into this previous version of our energy management team business process model and come up with a better model. So let me just walk through this and show you what's happening in BPMN that may not be entirely reflected in the Visio model, but it is a correct BPMN model. First of all, these treasure hunts that occur in either the Energy Trust of Oregon or the Energy Management Team, it's a separate process. It seems like, my observation is that these things happen. People come up with ideas, they stumble upon some, a thought, they see an opportunity, and they go through a process of, developing their own idea about what this this benefit might be in terms of energy savings. And in the end, they really generate an event. That's what these circular things are. So it's represented here as a message event. And the idea here is that this process of treasure hunting results in some thought that gets registered in some kind of way to the energy management team, and then it enters the process at that point. So you can think of this as these ideas flowing into this diamond here, which is a gateway, but this is not a decision gateway. This is just a combiner. So all it's saying is that when this event happens and this event happens and this one down here happens, they all get collected in this combining gateway. And then they pop into a task or activity, which is the ideas are added to an opportunity register. And so now we've got a mechanism for folding those ideas into a opportunity register, and they can happen at any time. I mean, we might receive these events, whenever they happen. There's no timing or requirement that that they happen at a certain frequency. They just happen. And we collect them and then we add them to an opportunity register. Now, I made an assumption that a number of things get folded into this opportunity register. It includes, project status, feasibility, scope, the funding, resource availability, all that stuff. There's at least a slot for that information in the opportunity register. It might be a separate document, I don't know, but for our purposes here, we're just going to fold it into one thing we call the opportunity register. And then probably what I need to do is insert an event right here, which says every 2 weeks, because it's I assume bi-weekly means every 2 weeks, energy team meeting that occurs in the energy team. And they take as input that opportunity register, which, you'll see there are arrows coming in from down here. We're going to get to them, but it's information that's been refreshed, and this opportunity register contains all that information. They have their meeting. And now what happens is the interesting part. I think what Brittany did was that you'll notice a pattern here. Here's this, this gateway is a decision. It has one input and multiple outputs. Likewise, this one, this one, they have inputs and multiple outputs, right? So, so what you see is in the TAN objects that are shown on this diagram. Oh, the other part of that is that a decision is made and then some attribute is set. They change the classification. The project status is modified. And then this whole area, which is shown in TAN, is really a decision model. It's not so much a process model as it is a decision model. It's saying what Brittany was representing is that this is how we make these project assessment decisions. And it uses all the information that we've combined in this opportunity register. And then it probably, I don't know if this is true, but probably what happens is that in this bi-weekly meeting and these other processes in blue around here, they pack information into this opportunity register, which allows them to make these decisions. So we don't have to think of it as a process. We can think of it as collect a bunch of data, throw it into this box of business rules, decision rules, and out pops the project status or assessment.
Hey, Mike, Josh is in our meeting, and he may want to just comment on what you've covered so far.
Yeah, sure. Josh, got any thoughts? Is this making sense?
Yeah, you're remarkably on task here. The one thing that popped into my head was, and I think it's, I don't know if it needs to be, it probably doesn't need to be explicitly called out, is that in that biweekly meeting, we get the ideas, but we also, so new ideas will generally get assigned to somebody. So then there's an assignment that gets made at that point to somebody, an energy team member, or and that's just the path that we use to follow up. So that's how we, that's part of that status decision-making process is they kind of then find, who out in the field, out there is the main stakeholders, and so they would work together with that person to figure out whether the project is doable or not, or how to do it, or a schedule. We also schedule the projects. We assign them a schedule based on those kind of conversations. So the meeting takes not only the ideas, but it also takes these sort of status reports. We review our status reports so that there'll be an opportunity in the meeting for each. We go line by line, really, and okay, here's an open idea that was assigned to Joe, and so Joe, tell us what you found out, and then Joe will report what they found out, and then that will give us ideas about the schedule, which we can set. The other attributes are, is it a low-hung fruit type of thing? Is it a something that is easily done or not easily done? Yeah, so those are kind of minor, and I don't know that they need to be called out specifically. I think it's sort of all in that, that might be a note off to the side, is here are some of the things that go on in that energy meeting, but that's all I can think of. I think you got it pretty close to how it actually goes.
Okay, good.
I wish Brittany were here. That's my other comment.
Well, we can do this again and meet with Brittany even separately if need be. But you bring up a really good nuance, which sometimes gets lost, and it's as follows. Notice that the opportunity register is a list. It's got a bunch of projects in it and ideas and things. But these, what follows after this biweekly meeting is a project by project assessment. So you can think of these processes over here as dealing with that bundle of information of all of these things. And then these processes over here, and as well as down here, everything else in blue, should give them a different color or something. But there's a way in BPMN to indicate that now you're unpacking that list and you're applying all these decisions to that particular project. And that includes things like you mentioned, Josh, the schedule and, the energy team member that's been assigned to maybe oversee it or help it and get it scheduled or whatever. So that's something that I might, we might consider adding to this model to make that explicit. Go ahead.
I think Josh used the word assessment, and that doesn't necessarily come through. I mean, status does. And gathering of information, but it's actually an assessment process that you are going through, right, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's an assessment from the perspective of it is a kind of a screening. There's a bit of screening that goes on. There's also some commitment that comes out of that. So, folks have to commit to implementing it, and you have to get staff to say, okay, we'll do that. Some projects, it's like, yeah, change out those Y strainers. The ones you're using are too fine, and we're getting high pressures in our utility water, and you could alleviate that by whatever it is. And they might just say, okay, we'll go do that. And then that's it, and then implemented, but most of the time it's more like we got to get this project listed as a project, and then it would go into some, a project process. So a project delivery process, either through our maintenance program, our Shell program for rehab and maintenance projects, or it might become a full-blown new capital project. But it looks like David's got his hand up over there.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, I was just curious if you guys had sort of a standard form for projects, where you kind of like what those standard items for that, you include with the project concept in the opportunity register. And then I'm also curious about, when it's not an obvious, like quick win kind of a thing, and you're trying to document sort of the value proposition, I guess. how do you approach that? Do you have a form or a template that you follow to kind of like identify, you know, return on investment or
Yeah.
expected energy savings? And then I'm curious about sort of like at the end, the sort of the data collection piece as well. At least for us, sometimes that data collection has to happen earlier before project implementation, so we have a good baseline for the rebate, and you have to have sort of like a measurement and verification plan. So I'm just these are the thoughts running through my head.
Yeah, and I think so forms not really at this level that I'm aware of. You know, I mean, somewhere in the asset management sphere, there is, you know, there's some documentation that's going on. Like we changed out, we changed out light bulbs, or we went to some new light bulb type. But I think those kinds of projects, those quick win, easy, doesn't really require any approval process. We can kind of just decide to do it. Those there's really no form for that I'm aware of. And here's the catch: is you're talking to the the least well-informed person of our group. My contribution to this group has been to bring Brittany and Mia and Leo to the group so that they can actually tell you how things work. But if it's a large, if it's a large enough project, like, okay, HVAC system, we need to, there's this newfangled thing that we could do here, and it looks like it's something. So this would be like where we could take advantage of the fact that there's already a plan to replace that HVAC unit. So that'll happen periodically. It's like, oh, there's already, this is already beyond its useful life. It's in the schedule. It's going to get replaced. Let's make sure when it gets replaced with whatever. So there are forms for that, like to make the kind of business case for making those kinds of decisions. That's in that RRM capital project shell. And then that goes through its own review process where it gets a kind of a risk how critical is it, kind of those questions.
The business case process and
yeah. So there are these can spin off into more formalized processes that have their own templates to answer that question. I hope that helped, but I'm not aware of anything within the way that we do it here that has standardized forms and documentation, other than Energy Trust probably in the background. I want to say, we do get that report at the end at each year, that tracks kind of what we did, what we invested in, and then but I don't think there's any real formal templates for that. It's a question for Brittany and Mia and Leo, and they can come back at a later time, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, ideas?
John Norton has some things going on in the chat here. Kind of getting to, is there a, kind of a high level, graphic that might be able to be used for external parties to communicate and explain what this process is about. It's almost like the blue boxes, kind of a summary of the kind of the major steps of the process and what's trying to be achieved. He could be multitasking and isn't his usual verbose self here, but I thought I'd just have people Refer people.
I'm happy to blather, but I try to not to by doing the texty in the chat thing. But yeah, basically, here's what I'm saying, and I've been thinking about this a lot because clearly all of you guys are more intelligent than me, and you're doing this stuff and you're using these business flow, process mapping, whatever the exact terminology is, to good effect. Like, okay, this is great and it makes sense, and I've really been able to realize, well, why? And that is to make sure that we understand all of the different salient details. However, if we were to take this and show, let's say, our new team members, just right off the bat, or we were to show other agencies and groups that we're trying to work with, they would look at that and go run fleeing from the room. I mean, it's like, oh my God, their eyes will glaze over and it won't have any effect of, communication going on. It's like the difference between, here's a map of the entire United States with every single road on it to help you get from San Francisco to New York City. It's just too much. At the same time, just having the single path, get down to Route 70, drive around Route 70, blah, blah, that, what I'm saying, will get you there, but it won't provide enough necessarily other information that you might need. So there's those two different scales, the granular scale to make sure that the process itself works, and then the broader big picture scale so that someone can wander on in and go, hey, I need to do energy. And what do you need me to do? It's like, well, here you go. Here's our big picture process. We need you to engage here. And then they start to get that in their heads a little bit. And then they can go detail with the lower, the more granular, lower scale would not be right. The higher scale, the greater, more granular detail to get themselves invested into the right location.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does that make it?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it always happens. I mean, we can make this, look like spaghetti if we wanted to, but, maybe that's helpful for some people, but there are two ways that you deal with that, at least in BPMN. And this is just keeping our BPMN hat on. One is encapsulation, and I'm going to show you an example of that here in a minute. The other one is a hierarchical organization of the model. So like with this model, this is kind of this one down here, it's kind of our high level model. And we're even going to simplify this more. And this little cross here that you see in some of these blocks means that there's detail below it. Now that detail may not be relevant to the person that's interested at the highest level, but it's very relevant to somebody that has to implement this process. So they can drill into it. So that drill in or zoom in idea is something that is used a lot in business process modeling. And that again, that's with our BPMN hat on, and then is our presenter hat. Put on our presenter hat and pull out PowerPoint or any other tool. We can make use of this and further simplify it or elaborate it with icons and pictures and such to convey meaning at the appropriate level that people want to see. So let's talk about that encapsulation idea, and remember what we had decided or thought we observed here was that this is a decision process driven by a bunch of rules that the city of Portland uses to assess. I guess we use the term assess or screen or come up with some disposition to each one of our projects in the opportunity list. Whenever we see this kind of detail in a business process model that looks a lot of gateways chained together and tasks that are shown as really just setting an attribute, and that's what each one of these blocks does. There's 10 blocks. They set some sort of a classification or status. Then we use, which is another standard, we use a decision table. It's called a decision table. It looks like this. And this is, I'll blow it up so you can see the pieces. But in a decision table, what you specify in each row are rules with a condition part and an action part. And if you go back to our model, you can see that each one of these gateways, it's got a question and a decision to either go this way or that way. Either the project is in progress or it's not in progress, it's something else. That's a single rule. So we can represent that. Yeah, that's exactly what you see in row 1. Is if the project status is in project, so you put the variable up here and you put the value down here, then go all the way over the right. There's nothing to be done here, nothing for any of these other properties. Then you basically got to route it to discuss the project development and address any issues tasked. And this is a the way the reason you represent it in a decision table is that these rules might change a lot. You might add to them. You might remove some. You might change the way they get evaluated. But you've got the idea is that it's kind of a box, and you throw all the input data into it, run all of these rules, and then the output pops out of it. Let me bring this down a little bit. And the way these get evaluated, and you can also imagine that if I had done this, if say I wanted to submit, these rules are solid, they're stable. We've used them for 5 years. Now we want to implement a automatic process where we just go collect the data that we have in our opportunity register, throw it at this box of decision rules, and then it tells me what to do next. And then I can have someone whose job is to, maintain these rules and make sure that they're appropriate for the utility on an ongoing basis. If I wanted to do that, then I've basically packed all of this TAN stuff into a table that I can easily manage. And then I can do the following, which is slide 4 in the set that you hopefully have downloaded. I can pack all of that into a single task, which I call project evaluation decision. Maybe that should be like project assessment decisions. And then, going back to our original model, you see here's an input. You think of all the inputs and outputs of everything that's in TAN. There's one thing coming in here. Here's something going out. Here's something going out, something coming back in. Follow it all the way to the end. Here's something going out. Here's a couple of other things going out. So I can pack all of that into one box, and then I have a gateway that, as a result of whatever evaluation takes place, I can route it to the appropriate place, and I get a model that's much simpler. I don't have all this decision spaghetti here. I've replaced it with a single box that has all of those rules defined in that decision table that I showed you previously. So it doesn't mean that you don't have to do this. You can certainly do this. But this is a simpler model, much more compact, and follows our convention, our standard, that we want in our business process model to show flow of work. And we want in our decision models to show instantaneous decision. You can think of it as an instantaneous decision that occurs. I throw a bunch of data in, I get the results. And now I have the results of that decision. So we now have a mechanism of encapsulating, maybe addressing at least part of John's concern about keeping our model clean. And it
Mike,
still has the same capability. Go ahead, John.
Josh has his hand up.
Yeah. I was just gonna, mention that this, what you last showed with the decision spreadsheet, kind of reminds me of expert system, what we used to call expert systems. I don't know if that's a term that resonates.
It is
with
exactly
you
an expert system. Yes.
Okay. All right.
It evolved from expert system. So
yeah, and to me that answers the question, why do we do this? So expert system, for those that might not be familiar, is a way to kind of capture what people do, so that when this is my take on it, when they move on, you have you have that that information available. I mean, so often, you know, when people leave their role, they develop all this knowledge, institutional knowledge, and you know, expertise over their careers, and then they leave, and we do almost nothing to preserve that. And then it's like we run around in circles. What are we going to do now because so and so left? This is how you kind of capture that. So I just wanted to mention that. So this is why we do this. I'm glad I clarified.
Excellent point. And, you know, the BPMN and this decision table idea are really what we're doing is the same thing. We're capturing, you know, the flow of work, and we're capturing the decision logic or the expertise, and capturing those skills and strategies that we may want to persist within, you know, the utility, so we can maintain it easily, keep it for future generations, et cetera. Okay.
So does the BPMN and the decision table frequently go together? Are they tools that
Yes.
are? Okay.
Yeah. This actually, the decision table is part of a standard called Decision Model and Notation, or DMN. And it's it was designed to be compatible with BPMN in the following way, exactly like what we've shown here. You create a task and you put this little icon. Do you see this icon?
Okay.
This table thing. So when you, in some of the tools like Signavio will do this, and some of the others come and does, and others, when you click on that table, it will pop open this or some version of, actually it'll pop open what's called a decision requirements diagram, which includes this decision table. But oftentimes it's mostly just, you know, the decision table.
And the evaluation 1 through 8 or whatever is just the sequential evaluation of the different
Yeah.
decisions.
That's right. And there are, I think, 7 different ways that they can be evaluated. Again, going back to Josh's comment about this coming from expert systems. What they ended up with in DMN was a design that allowed for 7 different ways of evaluating these. The way you interpret the decision table is everything across columns are and. So it's just take rule number 2. If condition 1 and condition 2, then do this.
Okay.
And then the way you do it vertically is or. So it's this rule or that rule or that rule or that rule. So they're mutually exclusive in some of the evaluation methods. There are 7 of them, but you can they're not hard to understand. And really there are only like 2 that are ever used. The others are kind of arcane and not always sensible, but they all start with a decision table, this structure. So anyway, when we get done, we've got a nice model that encapsulates a lot of important information, the flow of work, the decisions, and all of that necessary for the energy management team business process. Okay, so what have we done? Well, we folded in the treasure hunt idea. And the last thing I wanted to show was the other topic that came up was, okay, we need to fold in this treasure hunt idea. But also Eric brought up in the last meeting, let's just look at the model, the previous version of our model. He brought up that there's some, you know, once we embed these treasure hunt ideas, there's a lot of analysis and measurement and review and assessment that has to occur. And it's more like on a monthly cycle that we got to somehow figure out how to include that. So here's a proposal. This is just a proposal, but I've translated this model, as you see on slide 5, into this model that you see on slide 6. And what we learned from the Brittany's model and the city of Portland guys is that there are these events, not the one at the top, but these two events that trigger some new ideas about energy savings. Those need to be collected, and then on a monthly basis. And I think I think I missed a block here, which there's probably needs to be a task in here, which is the the monthly meeting, or maybe this is bi-weekly, I don't know, but we can change the frequency. And that's where that this idea up here of the bi-weekly meeting gets folded into our energy management team process, right? It would be right here. And then from there, again, this is a combiner. This isn't a decision. This is a combiner. It goes into what I've left is the three processes that David, you had specified of reviewing, assessing current performance. But the observation I made, if I may go back to the previous model, is that there's a lot of measure and analyze going on inside here somewhere. The difference is that the trigger for our original process was some sort of a, senior leadership re-engineering of their vision and mission. And now we need to fold in these treasure hunt ideas and other notions that just pop up, whenever and get assessed bi-weekly or monthly. So we've done that here with this combiner. So here's our process, our leadership process. They can still refresh their vision and mission and get go through this process of leadership commitment. It comes into this this set of tasks here. And now I've folded in the measure and analyze to this review and assess. And somewhere in these three processes, we need to accommodate Eric's ideas of those appropriate sub-processes. And then, if there is a requirement for any implementation or change or corrective or preventive action, it pops down into the field staff, the engineering, maintenance, and operations, and then, when that's done, goes back and triggers or waits for that monthly event where it all happens again. So the proposal here is that we really simplify this kind of spaghetti down here, fold, measure, and analyze it somewhere into these processes, and now we get a much more straightforward process that accommodates that and accommodates the treasure hunt notions. So that, again, that's a proposal. I don't know if it makes sense. We can, if you've got any thoughts or ideas right now or later, like to capture those and, maybe see if we can improve this even further. What do you think, Eric? Is it sensible or?
I think it's sensible, and I like that it's a little more standard. What I'm kind of wondering is the one is set update targets. I'm wondering if we have it in the monthly loop, but if we, organization to organization, if you're not refreshing targets would, to me, would be an annual thing. But does it make sense to leave it in the monthly cycle, and then within that sub process you could have at the beginning of that like a decision whether or not to evaluate it?
Yeah, one idea is just throw all of this into one block, and then we've got to sort out, what do we have to sort out? Well, we have to sort out how to do all of this stuff.
Right.
And our first cut at that first block, which was something like this. And I think, David, this came from your spreadsheet.
Yep.
So we have to figure out, we have to reconcile how, this and this, how to fold that together and maybe put it under one sub process here. Further simplifying our high level, which should address, even more John's concern.
I think this is really close to a high level. What do you think, David or Josh or?
What I'm trying to think through is what I make in my mind as a distinction between sort of an initial pass through the system that says, here's our current state, right? And here is the, here's the opportunity for improvement. We're setting our goals based on, and it's informed by things like treasure hunts. So, I mean, that's more of a continuous cycle. Therefore, these are our targets, and now we've set our targets, and how do we represent sort of the ongoing? And I think it was in that other slide, from your process, Eric, about how do we kind of continue to report on that. So in my mind, there's an initial kind of piece around performance assessment. And then there is the ongoing reporting piece. But maybe we're saying we don't need to necessarily make that distinction.
Yeah, not to confuse things further, but all of these thoughts here we want to
I mean, that's
capture.
really, yeah, I mean, that to me, that's really this identify, that's represented somewhat in this identify improvements.
Improvements.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. And so it's more like somehow the treasure hunt piece feeds into that. And I guess what I'm not following maybe is the notation to the left, what the different sort of diamonds with X's really mean. So maybe you can help me, maybe
Yeah.
explain that. So
Yeah, whenever you see a diamond with an X in it, it's got more than one input and one output. That's just combining things.
But what is it combining? Is that representing the thing that we just looked at
No,
from Portland, the detailed
I
thing?
don't. No, I don't think so. I think what you said originally is correct. That Portland, this decision making we talked about, in fact, this whole thing,
Right.
It's taking those treasure hunt ideas and then it's doing an assessment. And I think what we're saying is that's what's happening down in here.
Right.
Mhm.
That's within this
Yeah.
piece, right?
So these are just events. You can think of thing as it's something that just happens at a point in time, and we don't know when it's going to happen. We just receive it.
Mhm.
And then what happens is, these don't take any time or use any resources. It just flows into this combiner, and then it flows and it waits right here.
Free work, right?
So you can, well, there's a lot of work actually that goes on.
Yeah, that's
for
yeah.
this,
I mean,
right?
that's what.
Yeah. But I guess we can think of our opportunity register as a data object that sort of sits right here and waits every month.
Well, and maybe that's a better way to represent that in this is the opportunity register is the thing that's over here to the left and not the treasure hunts, right? Because to me, that is implying the process or the act of going out and identifying what the opportunities are, right? So this is really more of like like you say, the sort of the data repository of ideas already, right?
Yeah.
But then there's a different process to generate and move those ideas through to implementation.
Forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other thought I was having is that, all of this stuff is real. Well, most of what's up here, not this stuff,
Yep.
but what's up here is some part of the process that generates these, or maybe it's
Well,
before
I think
this?
it's no, I think it's after all of this. Like what that decision model that we're talking about is really it goes somewhere between, in my mind, between identify improvements and implementation, like this green
Oh, okay.
implementation
Okay.
box.
Yeah, that's fine
right?
too. I think that makes good sense. If it does to others, but anyway, from a model perspective, it does look like that is some decision process that happens in here. So we could fold it in that way. So I know we have just a few more minutes here, but I think what sounds to me like a logical next step would be think about Eric's model, think about David's model, this one, think about the city of Portland model. Oh, well, let's look at this one because it's a bit simpler. It's especially these parts right here. And come up with a proposal for a next version of this, which includes all of that. Not at this level, but as
Yeah.
Sub processes.
I would suggest that maybe we the really two, in my mind, well, I think we still have, these three sub processes there, right? Those
Yeah.
are really the basic things, like
Yeah, they happen.
how, assessing your performance, doing the data collection and having the system kind of report that out. There's the opportunity identification process. I think the stuff that Josh shared is great. In my mind, there's a number of other things that go into that process, both in terms of how you're defining the work of the treasure hunt that would be nice to document, and the follow-up on the decision making that happens, right? In terms of rebates, tracking and data collection, measurement and verification and things like that. And then the goal setting piece. But maybe that goal setting piece can be kind of melded with the sort of the performance reporting piece that Eric's model.
Oh, you mean in here?
Right. So this is really the operationalization of that performance reporting. The question is, how do you make the decision about what you're reporting on, right? What is the process leading up to this?
Okay, so if I guess you've got these slides, so maybe think about a consolidation of slide 9, slide 7, and slide 4. And that's kind of that's a big bite, but
Yeah.
That's really what we need to do to come up with a better slide 6. So, say 9, 7, and 4. Imagine melding all of those into 6.
Michael, would you mind sending me this PDF? I'm having issues getting to the SharePoint site.
Oh,
getting
yeah.
access. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send it out. Okay, Eric.
And I wonder, not to belabor it too much, but do we need something else in the yearly? I'm kind of asking David. I think as far as our baselining or something, I think there's an annual reporting type activity that we need in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I think we can build off of this management system audit, right? So that could be a reflection of progress towards building the components of the system to do all of this, and sort of more of a task based report back, right? Did you do all the things that you said you were going to do at the beginning of the year? What was working, what's not working, and an overall kind of energy performance type reporting.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was one thing that I thought was kind of missing from this high level. Okay, well, yeah, thanks, Mike, for pushing us forward on this. I think maybe we could try to set up a meeting before the next bi-weekly meeting.
Yeah,
to
that'd be a good
set up
idea.
these things.
I mean, I'm gonna, throw something together. I'll probably need a lot of help trying to reorganize things, but it maybe makes sense to do that and then on the fly change things, to better accommodate, your thoughts.
Okay, so I'll shoot out an email. Anyone interested and available, maybe we'll try to set something up for next week to discuss some more of the details around these.
Okay, great.
That sounds good.
Hey, one
right.
one real quick one before we go is this is not a fully fleshed out thought, but I think it's sort of an extension of what David was saying. But like in our energy team and the opportunity register and all of the work that we described there, I mean, I don't really feel like we're doing much in the way of standards development, and maybe that's kind of what partly I don't want to attribute to David incorrectly something that he's getting at, but there are all these other processes that are that feed in or that we need to inform out of from this. That I think those connections aren't exactly clear to me, and maybe that's just leave it there. So I would be saying like the larger facilities planning process, sort of asset management world, all of that, those inputs and outputs aren't necessarily apparent to me in this conversation.
Yeah, and you could have like a whole different process for how you're doing, energy evaluations within like a facility planning or capital planning process, right? That is similar or different than this, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or
it could either be its own thing or this could feed into it, right?
Yeah, and it definitely kind of impacts how you think about an idea. Like if it's an idea for a building that's going to come down in 2 years, maybe that's not something we want to follow up on. So I mean, there's other. I guess what I'm saying is that this system doesn't operate in isolation. It's informed by and it helps to inform all sorts of other processes that are going on. So that's all. I have to think about it a little bit more, but I think that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense
yes,
to me.
yes, David. Yeah.
All
Okay,
right,
everybody, thank you very much. And I'll post a video to our